Hello and welcome to Lesson 2 of Carry the Fire. Before we begin today, I want to encourage you to pause the video at any point where an idea strikes you or where you want to process something a little deeper. So stop it so you can have conversation on it, because that's where the real impact lies. Today I want to give you a foundational lens, a way of seeing that's going to bring this entire path into sharper focus. More than that, it's going to help you understand the modern world you're living in, why it feels the way it does, and how to live well within it. I'd consider this an introduction to the most essential education that every modern human needs, but it's also one that our schools almost never provide. You've sat in classrooms your whole life, you've memorized formulas, passed tests, clicked through slideshows, and yet no one ever taught you the foundations, how humans actually work, how to understand yourself, how to understand other people, how to make sense of the strange, chaotic, overstimulating world you were dropped into. It's wild when you think about it. We teach algebra, but not how motivation actually works. We teach geometry proofs, but not about the instincts that quietly shape every decision that you make. We don't teach you about these instincts, why they're there, or how to overcome them when necessary. We teach you about chemical reactions, but not how our psychological vulnerabilities are exploited every single day by the most powerful industries on Earth. We teach the periodic table, but not the basic human needs required for a flourishing life. And we're going to start today with those basic human needs. To understand these human needs, we need to start by looking at rats. As you'll see throughout the program, many of the scientific breakthroughs of the past century come from experiments on rats. Here's how those experiments usually worked. Researchers put a rat alone in a small metal cage, what is called a Skinner box. They would give them two drinking options, plain water and water mixed with heroin, cocaine, or morphine. Again and again, the same thing happened. Once a rat discovered the drugged water, he would come back over and over again, often to the point of overdose and death. And the conclusion seemed obvious. These drugs are irresistibly addictive. It's a linear equation. You try the drugs, you get hooked, you spiral, and you overdose, and then you die. But Dr. Bruce Alexander saw a flaw in the setup of these studies. Rats are social species, just like us humans. And the rats who were used in these studies lived in isolated, tiny metal cages. No room to move, no sunlight, no toys, and no interaction with other rats. In other words, these were severely depressed rats, sitting in solitary confinement. Researchers then took the depressed rats from their cages and placed them in isolated Skinner boxes with nothing to do but drink from 2 water bottles. All right, so what do you think they're going to do? Was it any wonder that they would keep coming back to the drugs? Noting this flaw, Alexander's team decided to test something a little different. They built what they called Rat Park. Basically, this is rat heaven. Instead of isolated cages, Rat Park was a large open space with cans to hide in, chips to move around, wheels for exercise, and lots of other rats of both sexes. And once the rats were settled in, researchers repeated the original experiment. 2 water bottles, one plain and one laced with morphine. But this time something shocking happened. The rats tried the drug water, but then mostly ignored it. They preferred to run, play, mate, explore, and live their little rat lives. Rather than escalating drug use, they seem to intentionally avoid the drugged water. And these studies have been replicated many times with similar results. When their deeper needs are met, rats aren't interested in drugging themselves into oblivion. A fulfilling environment drastically weakens what once looked like an irresistible biochemical addiction. So to be clear, morphine and other drugs are still very dangerous, and you definitely don't want to play with fire there. But the Rat Park story suggests something huge. We too can identify our deepest needs and then shape our environment to meet those needs. And when we do this, not only will we thrive, we will feel less need to numb ourselves with all those temptations that don't serve us. In other words, if you understand your own needs, your biology, your psychology, your wiring, you can build your own version of Rat Park. You can design the conditions that bring out your best self. And this is the ultimate skill for living well in the modern world. But to develop this, you will need a different kind of biology lesson. Not the biology of cells and microscopes, but the biology of you. So I'm going to tell you another story. The story of what your body expected when it came into this world. For 99% of human history, thousands upon thousands of years, you would have been a hunter-gatherer. You lived outdoors in a small roaming band of 50 to 150 people. People you knew intimately, who relied on you, and whom you relied on in return. Your days were shaped by nature. There was no AC in the summer, no heating in the winter, no clocks or alarms, no chairs or desks, No artificial light, no screens, no notifications, no ultra-processed foods, no sitting indoors for 10 hours straight. Instead, you hunted, gathered, cooked, talked, laughed, argued, celebrated, rested, mourned, and worked alongside the same tight circle of people, people who quite literally needed you to survive. You were physically capable, persistently active, deeply connected, embedded in activities that had a clear purpose. You were needed, useful, life-tested, and fully alive. You woke with the sun, you slept when the world went dark, you banded together with close friends and family to accomplish missions. This was not a perfect world. Life was hard, dangerous, and often tragic. But it's simply human life as it was for most of human history. And that life, those conditions, shaped every instinct, impulse, emotion, bias, craving, fear, and drive that you have today. I'm going to repeat that because it's the cornerstone of understanding yourself and other human beings. The world of your hunter-gatherer ancestors shaped every instinct, emotion, bias, craving, fear, drive, and spiritual need that you possess. You don't have the luxury of not understanding that hunter-gatherer world because your biology still thinks it lives in that world. But it doesn't. And that mismatch explains a lot about the modern world and why you struggle and what feels off and what you actually need to thrive. Your nervous system was designed for vitality and connection, not for comfort and constant stimulation. It expected a tribal world where your actions mattered, where you had a clear role, and where your strengths were used. Now compare that to today. You wake up indoors under artificial light. You sit most of the day. You stare at glowing rectangles. You scroll instead of socialize. You eat food engineered to hijack your cravings. You drink toxic energy drinks and sugary beverages. You chase individual goals that often feel strangely empty. You feel overwhelmed but untested, overstimulated but underfulfilled, surrounded by people but largely unknown, comfortable but restless. If you're struggling, you may wonder, why am I anxious? Why can't I focus? Why aren't I motivated? Why don't I feel confident, energized, and alive? Nothing's wrong with you. You're a hunter-gatherer born into a world that your nervous system was never prepared for. You're running ancient software on a futuristic operating system, and the friction is inevitable. Things feel off because you're not getting the most essential nutrients of a human being, because your body still expects sunlight on your skin, physical labor and constant movement, deep rest, real food, times of long hunger, cold, and heat, a clear role contributing to something bigger than yourself, touch, eye contact, storytelling, song, and shared purpose. When those needs are not met, the nervous system sends signals like anxiety, boredom, distraction, doubt, cravings, numbness. These aren't symptoms of failure, they're signals of some sort of misalignment. I'll give you an analogy to make this clear. There's a product called a soil tester. Most homeowners might pick one up if their grass or plants aren't growing very well. So the product checks the soil for its vital needs: light, water, nutrients, pH. And you are vastly more complex than any plant, and yet we routinely ignore that there are physical needs also required for you to thrive. Then we wonder why we feel terrible. So maybe you just need a nap, a walk, some vigorous exercise, or even a hug and a chat. Eye contact and physical contact are deep needs. We yearn for them because they are evidence that we are connected and cared for. Knowing that is the most foundational need for human survival. Here's another reason we have to understand how humans work. We now live in a world that is saturated with what are called supernormal stimuli. This is a technical term, but it's one of the most important ideas about modern life, so consider it essential vocabulary for Carry the Fire. Supernormal stimuli are modern products that hijack ancient instincts. Your brain craves sugar because for most of human history, sweetness was rare and valuable. If you found it, you ate as much as possible because tomorrow was not guaranteed. Modern food doesn't just provide abundance, it's engineered to delay satiation and to keep you eating long past hunger. Technology follows the same logic. Social media, games, and apps are engineered to hijack your attention, your emotions, and your need for approval. The same instincts that once helped you survive. The smartest people in the world make a lot of money by keeping you scrolling, consuming, and coming back. Not because they hate you, but because your attention is now very profitable. And here's the problem. You were never taught any of this. To me, this is the most important thing to make sure that all people understand so that they have the capacity to go out into the world and to thrive. But the typical school path doesn't equip students with a basic set of self-defense skills for this environment. And until you understand these things and you learn how to train yourself accordingly, the fight is rigged against you. Never in history have human beings had more freedom. You can live anywhere, do almost anything, consume endlessly, and yet meaning is rarer, anxiety is higher, depression is widespread, comfort and choice abound, but fulfillment is elusive. And that's a central challenge of modern life. How do you live wisely in a world engineered to pull you toward distraction, ease, and consumption? The Rat Park story offers the beginning of an answer. You don't win by sheer willpower. You win by understanding your needs and by designing your environment to support them. More than that, you win by understanding how you as a human work and the science of how all humans work. There's much more we need to learn in order to do this well, and we're going to get there. For now, this lesson is about establishing that new lens, that essential frame, the lens through which everything else will make sense. As a review, the world of your hunter-gatherer ancestors shaped every instinct, emotion, bias, craving, fear, drive, and spiritual need that you possess. The needs of that reality still govern your body and your nervous system today, whether you recognize it or not. To thrive, those foundational physical needs and the deeper needs of your spirit must be met. Now that you understand the game board, we can begin learning how to play the game better and how to win at it. And now that you have this background, that choice between Kakia and Arete becomes even more timely and important. So for now, just remember this. This lesson is just the map and the fuel. The real impact begins now in your discussion, your reflection, and the work you do between this lesson and next lesson. Good luck to you. Carry the fire.